Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mingsa, and today I welcome you guys to a very special Advanced Wars by Web replay commentary. This is the very first League match that I've showcased on this channel. So if you don't know, you can go sign up at something called the Global League over at Advanced Wars by Web. And when you do that, it's going to match you up against players of equal skill. And I haven't been playing a lot of League matches. Lately, I've made it a bit of a mission to try and get my matchmaking score up so that I can go up against some of the more skilled players on this website. But this particular match was very entertaining. Now, when you select League matches, you have three options. You can either play a standard match, which is just, a regular match, a Fog of War match, which is a Fog of War match, and then you have a third match type called a high income match, which is basically a match where each property gives 2,000 income. I played quite a lot of these on stream recently, and it's a format that I've been enjoying more and more. When you're playing a high income match, you get to play around with units that you otherwise would almost never see. You get to see neo-tanks, you get to see a lot of bombers, you may even see some battleships, and that is quite insane. And today's replay commentary is of a high income match. Now, whenever I play a League match, I'm going to pick strong COs. I'm going to pick whatever strong CO is available to me. You're usually limited by tiers, so both players has to pick a similar tiered CO, and for this match, I decided to go with Olaf. He is incredibly strong. He doesn't have any day-to-day abilities, and he has a rather mediocre normal power in Blizzard, just makes it snow for a day. However, he does have one of the best superpowers in the game in Winter Fury. Deals 2 HP damage to all enemies on the map. Global map damage powers are disgustingly broken, they're incredibly strong, and the added snow is the cherry on top, really holds your opponent's push. And in this match, you will get to see one of the best Winter Furies I have ever popped. Seriously guys, it was absolutely magnificent. Now, you may have noticed that I am going up against Hawke, and many of you will probably say, oh, but doesn't Hawke hard counter Olaf? He has a better day-to-day power in that his units have 10% extra firepower, and his superpower, Black Storm, seems to hard counter Winter Fury on paper, since he can pop it after Winter Fury is activated to not only heal all the damage done by Winter Fury, but also deal 2 HP damage back to his opponent. So logic kinda dictates that Hawke should come out on top, since he has a power that can basically nullify Winter Fury. Well, that's actually not the case at all, and in this match I'm going to show you exactly why. The map that we're playing on is called Draw of Tyrants. It's a very interesting map. 2 bodies of water separate the players from the center. We start out with 1 base each, and we can capture another base very close to us. And there's a third base on the other side of the water that allows us to bring units into the center of the map. Now, because both players are kind of separated by this body of water, transport units are going to be very important in this match. Transport copters are going to be good. Black boats are even a very good investment on this map, since they can ferry 2 infantry units into the center. Hell, I would even go as far as saying that a lander is warranted on this map, especially when you're playing a high-income match like this. Now, there are 2 comm towers on the map. They aren't very contested. Player 1 will grab this comm tower right here, and player 2 will grab this comm tower. And mostly they'll be left alone, although if either player forgoes the middle, he might find himself losing his comm tower, which would be very bad. Now, there are 2 very exposed flanks on this map, one down here and one up here. Now, there is some forest and some mountains, but for the most part, these 2 sections are very open, unlike the middle, who is very closed off with lots of mountains here. So in the middle, there's going to be more opportunities for indirect play, whereas on the flanks, there's going to be a lot more tanks and other fast direct units dominating the battlefield. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let's jump into the match and check out the first turn. So the first thing I do is, of course, go for the base right away. This is a no-brainer, and I get another infantry out as well. My opponent does the same thing. However, he decides to go for the airport with the 2nd infantry, which of course he has over me because he is player 2. And yeah, both players are just going to be building infantry for quite a while here. On a high-income match like this, where each building gives so much more resources than it usually does, you really have to stay on top of your capture game. If you forgo too many properties early on, you will fall behind quite quickly in terms of economy. Now, I'm actually sending my infantry out into the middle here. I'm not going for the airport. He is. And I will say that after seeing him do this, I immediately regretted this move a little bit, because I realized that getting a transport copter out early is going to be very valuable in this match. Now, my opponent, he decides to go for the airport, and he also sends infantry out into the center as well. And with that extra infantry that he gets, he will actually get a pretty significant capture advantage early on. Now here I send my infantry towards the airport, trying to go for that immediately, and I send my other infantry into the middle. I'm trying to grab some of these contested properties early on. But at the end of the day, this isn't really a fantastic move. I probably should have just gone for these 2 properties immediately to try and get a little bit of an income advantage. Once again, both players are just building infantry. Neither player is rushing out something early on. Now, we are playing without Fog of War, of course, so the moment either player builds a tank, you know, the other player will know to respond with a tank of his own. So when you're playing on a non-Fog of War map, both players can kind of like boom up quite heavily with infantry on either side. It's kind of like a game of chicken, you know, the first one to build a tank kind of sets in course the aggression. But if neither player wants to commit to a tank early on, both players could just build infantry for a very long while, turning it into a very high economy match. And that's exactly what is happening. My opponent is just building infantry so far. So I am going for the base in the center, very important to do this. And I'm once again just building infantry. My opponent does the same thing. He decides to go for these 2 properties in the bottom here, whereas I'm going into the center, trying to grab some properties early on. Now, at some point, I definitely think we should focus on this harbor right here, because again, getting a black boat out early on this match is actually going to be very useful. Again, the ability to just send 2 infantry into the center here is going to be very valuable. And the black boat isn't a very big investment, and it can repair air units and refuel some units close to the shorelines. It's actually a very good unit. Now, day 5 rolls in, I decide to start capping the base, and I start capping this property right here in the center. Not really a contested property per se, but it's a property closer to the middle that I do like getting this one early on. I decide to go for the harbor, and yeah, I'm just getting more properties around my initial starting location. So my opponent gets a transport copter and immediately starts ferrying units into the center right here. Now, I will say both players have a lab. There's no HQ on this map, so whoever captures the opposing player's lab will win the map. You can essentially look at these labs as an HQ with less defense. So my opponent decides to build his very first tank, and upon seeing this, I realize that I have to respond in kind. I cannot just continue to build infantry, tempting as it may be. The moment my opponent builds a tank, I have to build a tank as well. But I decided to go for this property right here. Probably should have gone for these 2, honestly. I don't really see any point in trying to grab the properties in the center, because with my opponent having a tank out, he'll be able to interrupt pretty much any cap in this vicinity. So at this point, I probably should have just gone for the properties closest to my base. I get out a transport copter. I realize that's going to be very useful. And I build a tank of my own. I build it down here rather than up here. I realized that, you know, there are two ways I can approach this, basically. I can build a tank in the top lane, or I can build a tank in the bottom lane to threaten his infantry down here. His transport copter loads off his infantry right here, so now he is in a perfect position to interrupt this cap if I ever try to go for it. This mountain is kind of preventing me from reaching this property on the next turn. So he sends his tank into the center. Now, there are shorelines right here, so you'll be able to move a unit across the lake. It may not look like it. It looks a little bit weird, but this is kind of like a bridge in a way. So the body of water doesn't restrict movement as much as you might think, just from looking at the map. And he builds a second tank. I mean, this is pretty classic. You know, in non-Fog of War matches tend to be tank spam fests, basically. Tanks are just kind of the best unit to build early on when there's no Fog of War, because, you know, you can try to build indirects early on for sure, but since your opponent can scout them, they're more useful for zoning rather than actually, you know, setting them up in sneaky location and trying to get valuable shots. So with both players just building tanks, there's not really any point in building anything other than tank. Maybe a battlecopter, but again, they can be hard countered again by an anti-air. You know, the moment you build a battlecopter, your opponent's gonna see it. This is why I prefer to play with fog, but this ended up being a very interesting match regardless. So again, both players just continuing to capture. I'm deciding to go for the comm tower pretty early on now, because I realized that in a couple of days we're going to start taking our first engagements, and I would like to have that 10% extra firepower as early as possible. So yeah, I'm also building a tank, and I'm continuing to build infantry. I'm trying to match my opponent's tank numbers. So Hawke player is going for this property right away, and he's blocking it with a tank, so he's going to get one of the contested properties really early on. There's not really a whole lot I can do about it, so I decide to let him get it. He sends his transport copter down here to fetch an infantry, very well played on his end. And he's pushing pretty hard down in the south here. He's trying to get all of the properties. He sends his tank in to back up his infantry, and I'm realizing here that, you know, he's definitely going to just completely roll over me in the south if I don't do anything about it. However, I have 2 tanks on the way, so I am matching him quite evenly in numbers. In fact, I have a tank advantage down here, but he, of course, has 2 tanks in the center. So I need to get my tank count up somehow. He builds yet another tank and more infantry, and yeah, here on my turn, I decide to just let him have this property and go for this property instead. I'm not really gonna try and sacrifice a bunch of units trying to interrupt this cap. Like, I'm not even gonna be able to do it anyways, there's no point. But I do send my own tank towards his tank, and I sent another tank to back it up. So right now, I have 2 tanks threatening his 1 tank. He does have another tank coming in though. So again, relatively even numbers in the center here. I decide to start going for the comm tower. He has no way of interrupting this. He hasn't started to cap his comm tower yet, so I figure I'm going to be able to press my advantage early on by having a little bit of a firepower lead over him in the first few turns. Now, he's going to be able to get it in 3 days if he moves towards it, but still, this is definitely an advantage for me. I decide to go for this property right here. I realize he's probably going to be able to take it back from me very soon, but that doesn't stop me from trying. Send my transport copter into the middle. Again, this transport copter is just going to run back and forth and ferry a bunch of infantry into the center. It's going to be a very important unit. So here, I decide to build an artillery. Now, maybe this seems a little bit weird, but artillery are actually pretty good on maps like this, especially in the center. You can see there's a lot of mountains restricting movements. I got a lot of infantry and tanks. So if I can set my artillery up in such a way where I can surround it with tanks and infantry, it becomes a very powerful zoning tool because it basically discourages him from attacking my tanks with his tanks. So building an artillery right here in the center, I don't think that was a bad move at all, even though I keep saying that indirects become better in Fog of War. On this map, I do actually think having some indirects in the center will serve you well. Now, of course, with Fog of War, your indirects become a lot easier to hide, but there's also an argument to be made for indirects without Fog of War. You'll be able to always place them out of range of the enemy, as long as you position your indirects smartly. As long as you position your indirects wisely, you will always be able to shelter them from the enemy. And Hawke is not a CO that has a movement increase on either of his powers. Now, if you go up against a CO like Adder, for example, it becomes a nightmare to try and keep your indirect safe because, of course, he can increase his movement range and then suddenly catch you by surprise. Whereas a CO like Hawke, he cannot do that. So that's why I figured it was relatively safe to open up an early game artillery here. So day 8 rolls in, and Hawke is doing a good job transporting his mechs into the center. Again, both players utilizing those transports really well. He moves his tank forward on this property right here. I'm not going to really want to take an engagement against this tank when it has 3 defense. That's going to be really, really hurtful for me. That's going to just hurt me a lot. So this is a good move on his end, and he does have 2 additional tanks to back up his tank. In terms of our value right now, I have a slight value lead over him. He has a slight income lead over me though, but I'm going to be capping a lot of properties this turn. So he moves his tanks in and he decides to go for a medium tank. This is a pretty smart move on his end. Once a player brings a medium tank to the action, it completely changes the way the game works. Because of course, as long as there's just tanks involved, it basically is whoever has the most amount of tanks or whoever can get the most first strikes on their tanks will win. But the moment a medium tank is included into the battle here, it completely changes the dynamic because, of course, a medium tank is just able to take on almost an unlimited number of tanks. You know, I mean, maybe if you have like 4 tanks and they all attack the medium tank off terrain, they can do something to it, but it's not very cost effective. So at this point, you need either indirects or a medium tank of your own, or alternatively a bomber or a neo tank if you can afford it. So he continues to move forward here, and I notice here that, yeah, I'm probably not going to be able to hold on to this property, but you might be surprised seeing what happens next. So he continues to build tanks. Again, both players just being really aggressive with their direct units. On my turn, I finish capping my comm tower, so now I have that 10% extra firepower. He's not going to get his comm tower until another 2 days. I'll have a slight lead over him in that regard. I go for some of these outlying properties over here. I bring my tank onto this property right here. I figured this was a very good place for it. As long as the tank is on this property, it is pretty safe from being attacked from any of these tanks because, of course, it's an allied property. So if he wants to attack my tank, not only will he have to go up against the tank with 30% extra defense, but it will restore 2 HP at the start of his next turns. Now, a lot of people keep misquoting me, saying that repairs are always bad. I never said such a thing. I said repairs are very good when you can get them on the front lines, and this is a very good example of that. Here's a tank Here is a tank on the front lines. It is on a property that is mine, and if the Hawke player attempts to take any engagements against me, he will get absolutely crushed. Also, this tank is covering a nice area around here, so again, this tank can just sit comfortably on this property and move out whenever it is needed. In situations like these, it is very common for sort of like a stalemate to break out where both players just kind of sit in the middle and neither player wants to move forward. Well, this is not going to be the case in this game. It's going to get action-packed pretty damn quickly. So again, I send my transport copter back, I get myself a mech. Even in high income matches, never shy away from getting a couple mechs. If you can get a couple of good engagements with your mechs, then that will always be really good. And here I see a little bit of a weakness in his formation. I see this mech right here, it is completely isolated. It is not backed up by any of his units. So I decide to move my tank down and take a shot at it. You know, this is good. You know, taking 1 HP of damage on my tank to deal 7 HP of damage to his mech, that's a very good trade right there. Mechs very weak when they get attacked first. And here you can see he has no way of punishing this. This tank is being held back by his forest. This medium tank is way too far in the back. So whenever you can get away with doing this, definitely do it. This is not something I would have done in a Fog of War match, but since we're playing without Fog, I feel comfortable doing this because I see every single one of his units. Move my artillery into action. This artillery is basically just going to be used as a deterrent. It's going to be used to basically prevent him from taking any engagements against my tanks. But I do recognize that I have to respond to his medium tank, so I build a medium tank of my own. So day 9 rolls in for my opponent. He starts capping his comm tower. He moves his infantry back, which is understandable, and he starts to capture, sending his transport copter in to fetch more infantry. Again, he's being very good with the movement of his transport copter right here. You notice he's placing it exactly 2 tiles away from the base so that the mech can move its maximum duration and get loaded off basically as far as the transport copter can travel in 1 turn. So he's utilizing his transport movement perfectly right here. And he decides to build his first battlecopter. Battlecopters are going to be very strong on this match, a lot of tanks flying about, and the airports are a little bit off the beaten path though, they're very far in the back, so the battlecopter is going to take many turns in order to get into the center. And here, he decides to send his tank in and attack my infantry, and he does the same thing. He follows up with an infantry of his own, attacking it and taking this property right here. He moves other tanks in. He does something kind of cocky here. He moves his tank onto my property. However, he has enough tanks to back it up so that it's going to be very difficult for me to take any engagements. I was seriously contemplating punishing this by moving in, but he has 2 tanks in range. So again, tanks are kind of like, you know, it's kind of like a game of chess, you know, where one piece is guarding the other. This is a similar situation right here. Just like you cannot capture a piece in chess when it is guarded by another piece, this is very similar. This tank is guarded by 2 tanks. Basically, all of his tanks are guarded by 2 tanks. If I attack this tank, these 2 tanks will attack me. If I attack this tank, these 2 tanks will attack me. And I only have 2 tanks myself. So he has 3 tanks to my 2, meaning that I can't really attack him in any way. Now, I do have an artillery, and if I position this wisely, I can use it to zone him out of certain areas. However, one wrong move and this artillery gets taken out. So I gotta be very careful. He moves his medium tank into the center. Things are about to get very heated. Now, on my turn, here I am seriously thinking a long time. I remember spending a lot of time thinking about this next move. So I have the ability to send my tank down here and attack his infantry. Doing that, his tank will get the first strike on my tank. However, it will also prevent him from capturing this property. So basically, I'm asking myself, is it worth it to sack a tank to prevent him from getting a property? Normally, I would say no. However, this is not a normal match. This is a high income match where each property is worth 2,000. So if I prevent him from taking this property for 3 turns, then that is 6,000 income that I have gained. Not only that, I mean, it's actually even more than that, because if he takes this property away from me, he will get 1,000 income, and he will get 2,000 income, and I will lose 2,000 income. So just having this property not be captured for 2 turns means a total shift of 8,000 funds. You know, 4,000 to him, 4,000 funds to me, 4,000 funds away from him. So I would actually say that when you're playing a high income match, it's more important to interrupt caps than ever. And so with this in mind, I decide to move in. It's probably not the first thing I do on this turn. First, I just decide to transport my mech. I capture the property, I move in, and I move my tanks. Basically, this is kind of like a game of chicken. Whoever attacks first basically just both players just feeling each other out. I don't feel confident going into this yet, so I'm just kind of like setting up with the artillery. Whoever has the artillery on their side is usually the one who will play the least aggressive, because indirects by their very nature are defensive. So the fact that I have an artillery means I am much more confident just hunkering up in the middle and pretty much just trying to bait him into making the first move. So here I decide to attack with my tank. I attack his infantry, and I move in with an infantry of my own. This infantry is basically here to interrupt this infantry when he decides to go for the property. So here I am letting a Hawke tank attack my tank, and it's going to be a Hawke tank with the comm tower backing it up. So it's going to be a 20% extra firepower tank. This is going to hurt me a lot. It's not really going to be easy for me to take this engagement. However, I am preventing him from taking one of my properties, and in the end, if I can delay his cap for 2 days, I have already earned that in terms of value. I've earned 8,000 funds in terms of pure value. Taken away 4,000 funds from him, earned 4,000 on my end. That is more than the value of a tank, aka it's worth it, in my opinion. So I build a tank and a neo tank. You know, I've gained such an appreciation for neo-tanks lately, like I really have. The more I play, and especially in high-income matches, the more I'm just appreciating not only the neo-tank's extra +1 movement, but the fact that it can just kill regular tanks in one shot if they're on planes. Medium tanks cannot do that, neo-tanks can. The 20% extra damage that they do is so valuable in punching through the enemy's lines, and while their survivability is pretty pathetic, I have actually come to the realization that yes, in some matches, neo-tanks are absolutely worth it. The extra firepower is so nice, and in this match you will see just how effective neo-tanks can be. So again, I'm just waiting on this tank right here. I'm letting him do the first move. Now, his day rolls in, he continues to cap, he takes the comm tower. He takes a shot on my tank with his mech right here, and then moves in with his own tanks. This was a very good move on his end. He basically just destroyed one of my tanks for the cost of a 3 HP mech. And he keeps capturing properties, and here he decides to attack with his tank, and my tank gets brought down to 5 HP. I do believe this was a slightly bad luck roll on his end. I do believe that a tank with 20% extra firepower should have been able to reduce my tank to 4 HP, but it goes down to 5, so I think he rolled low on his luck roll here, which is very good for me. And he starts to capture, which is fine. You know, his infantry only has 3 HP, so it's not really going to be able to do anything. He drops off another mech in the center, and he moves in with his units. Again, setting up for a pretty hefty engagement right now. The medium tank is in position. I mean, like, this is a powder keg just waiting to explode right here. Both players are setting up. And here he does something kind of weird. He decides to go for a rocket. Now, I'm not saying a rocket isn't good in this situation, but considering how aggressively he is playing so far, I was very surprised to see him build a rocket at this stage. I thought he was just going to keep on the aggression. A rocket is not a bad move in this situation. Like, if you can get a rocket on this area, it will zone out the entire middle, which is very strong. But I thought he was just gonna go like all in on his aggression, and the fact that he built a rocket here, it really surprised me. So, and again, he did something very strange here. He actually moves his infantry forward here. This allows me to take the first strike, but I think his train of thought here was basically that he was going to sack this infantry. He thought he basically had one down here, so I think he wanted to go for my comm tower, and he felt comfortable moving his infantry forward to bait me into attacking, because he has a lot more infantry ready to follow this up with. Now, on my turn, I decide to go for a battlecopter of my own. I realize battlecopters are going to be very good on this match, and I build another mech. Again, whenever you can get mechs into the center man, they're going to be great. I move my tank back for repairs, and I decide to take a shot here, and again, this engagement actually went really well for me. I'm able to bring his tank down to 4 HP with my tank having 3 HP left. Honestly, this is not how the engagement should have gone. Yes, I'm on a forest, which gives me 2 extra defense, but I think what happened here was that he rolled low and I rolled high. Because, like, this is basically a max tank right now, and there's no way a max tank should be losing or be evenly tied in an engagement where it got the first strike, even when you have slightly better terrain. So I do think that I had a bit of a luck going in my favor here. I move my infantry down here, I interrupt his cap. You know, he was never going to get this anyway, but I'm just kind of putting the infantry in position to interrupt this incoming cap right here. And since he's focusing all of his attention on the comm tower area, I know he's not going to follow it up, so I'm actually going to keep this property. So it turns out that my decision to send a tank in here to attack him was actually the right move. Sometimes, you know, sometimes it may seem like a bad idea to let your tank be attacked first, but if it comes at the cost of keeping a property, it might just be worth it. So again, I attack his infantry near the comm tower, pretty predictable here, and I decided to cap some of these properties myself. Right now I am 4,000 ahead of him in income, but he's going to be able to bridge that relatively quickly. Now I'm moving my Neotank here. Really dangerous unit to have in the center right here. He needs some kind of response to this. A rocket is not a great response to a Neotank because the Neotank is so mobile. It can close the distance really quickly, move within the rocket's minimum range. So I would say that right now he needs to get either out a bomber or a Neotank of his own. Medium tanks are awful against Neotanks. They are not great. If they can get the first strike, they can be relatively cost effective. However, on a non-Fog of War map like this, where both players can perfectly see the range of their units, medium tanks are not going to get the first strikes on Neotanks. Neotanks will be able to strike first with their +1 movement, and if a Neotank strikes a medium tank first, it decimates it, brings it down to like 2 or 3 HP. It's a really bad trade for the other player. So Neotanks, very good against medium tanks. So I moved the artillery up in the woods right here. Basically, I'm thinking he's going to try and go for this property right here, so I'm moving this artillery basically to deter him. This artillery right now is covering a lot of important tiles, and I can easily set my units up in a defensive formation to prevent him from going for my artillery. So this is the strength of an artillery in non-Fog of War. It's not really so much that the artillery will get to shoot a lot, but this artillery is just preventing him from taking engagements in this area. If he moves in a tank right now, it's going to get shoved by the artillery, and he doesn't want to do that. So this artillery is just doing a really good job being a zoning tool right now. So his day rolls in, he moves his mechs into the mountains. That's where they want to be. That's where they are at their best, you know. The dream scenario is, of course, always a mech being able to take a shot. So, you know, that's always what the mechs want to do. They want to be in the mountains where they have the defense. It's the best position for them to be in. You know, the dream scenario is, of course, a mech shooting a tank in the mountains. So he continues to move his infantry down south. He takes a shot at my infantry. And here he brings in a tank on my comm tower to take a shot at my infantry. I thought this was a bit of a weird move. You know, he's essentially throwing away a tank. Maybe he felt confident in doing this because I just sacked one of my tanks, but down here, this engagement is actually going pretty evenly, so I was very surprised to see him do this. Now here, he decides to shift his focus to the north. He moves his medium tank up, he moves his other tank up, and here he decides to go full-on aggressive. He really wants to dominate the top here. So he's moving in 3 tanks and a medium tank and 2 infantry, and right here, I'm thinking, okay, this is a big shift on his end. He's just basically gonna say, okay, I'm just gonna, you know, you can have the center. You can have the center. I'm just gonna go north. However, there is something very strange about this, and that's the fact that he built a rocket. Now, if building a rocket in the center indicates that he's gonna try and take the center. A rocket on its own is very weak. It needs units around it to protect it. I actually say this rocket is not in a very good position right now because it's completely exposed. He cannot move it forward. I have fast units. I have tanks and neo-tanks in the center. This rocket is basically stuck in the back. Now he has a battlecopter, but battlecopter is not exactly the best in terms of pure staying power. And I don't have an anti-air yet. I should have probably built an anti-air this turn. This is a mistake I'm noticing right now because this battlecopter is going to reach the center very soon. However, the fact that he's going so hard on the north here, imagine if instead of this rocket, he had 2 extra tanks up here. Like, imagine how much scarier this push would be. And not having a rocket in the center, it's not really a big deal for him per se. But he's moving the rocket forward, and he has to be so careful with this rocket because one misstep and this Neo tank is right up in its face, you know? But he has battlecopters in very good positions. He finally takes down my tank with his tank, which is very good. But at this point, I do have a second tank to take him out. And yeah, he builds a second rocket. And again, this was so weird. Like, one rocket I can understand. A second rocket, not a big fan of this move right here. He's basically, I think his thought process is he's going to try and win up north. And on paper, this seems like sound logic. But in practice, it just didn't really end up working out. I'm going to show you why in a couple of turns. So he builds another mech, another battlecopter. Again, on a match like this, definitely spam battlecopters. You can definitely afford it. They're wonderful harassment units, and both players have so much money to play around with here. So as day 12 rolls in here, you can see that the Hawke player is definitely ahead of me in terms of value. 134,000 to my 113,000. So basically almost 20,000 value ahead of me right here. That's pretty good, and we're tied in incomes. This is a bad situation for me to be in. He has taken way better engagements than I have. So here, I decide to go for his tank on my comm tower. I decide to, instead of taking out his 4 HP tank, I decide to take out the tank that he has on my comm tower. And I already have my normal power. I contemplated popping it, but I decided against that. And I decided to take a shot at his tank with my infantry. Why not? You know, taking an HP off a tank, that's always useful. 1 HP off your infantry, that doesn't matter. It's going to get healed up anyway. And here, he does probably the first big mistake of the match. He places his medium tank in range of my medium tank. And this was just bad on his end. Like, letting me get the first strike there, that's a big value lead that he's just throwing away here. And I decide to move in with my other tank, get a first strike on his tank, but he still has 2 full HP tanks ready to attack here, so I need to do something fast. I decide to move my mech into the north. You know, it's probably going to get taken out, but at the very least, it might keep his tanks busy. I decide to take another shot at his tank. I roll pretty low here, and I think he rolls pretty high on his counterattacks. That didn't end up being great for me. And I move in a battlecopter. He doesn't have any anti-air in the vicinity. He does have a battlecopter of his own. But I decided that, you know, I'm just going to get a second battlecopter, you know, I need something to deal with all these tanks. And here, I decide to move in with my Neo tank and take a shot at his tank. I know there's a battlecopter here. The battlecopters, they aren't that scary against Neo tanks. They usually will deal around 2 HP of damage to them. And while this seems nice on paper, the battlecopter kind of want to be off doing other things. I mean, sure, taking 2 HP off a Neo tank, I'm not going to say it's bad, but it just doesn't end up really taking the bite out of the Neo tank. An 8 HP Neo tank is still very dangerous. It can still do a hell of a lot of damage. But imagine if the battlecopter instead takes like 6 HP off a tank. That completely takes away its bite. So I'm not really that worried about his battlecopter attacking my Neo tank, even though it is on a road and with a high luck roll, he might take 3 HP. It doesn't matter. A 7 HP Neo tank is still a very scary unit that can do a lot of things. So here, I attack his mech with my infantry. Again, whenever you can take engagements against mechs with your infantry, always a good idea to do that. Mechs are worth triple, so infantry just, you know, they're just going to be valuable statistically going up against the mech. I move in another medium tank, and here I decide to get up my anti-air at long last. I probably should have done it 1 turn ago. And here I do something kind of reckless. I move my artillery in here. Now, there's definitely opportunity for him to go and attack my artillery here, but what I kind of like about artillery in this situation is that even if he manages to attack it, it's just worth 6,000, man. It's a cheap unit, you know? I can afford to lose it. So this is the problem with the rockets. A rocket is worth 15k. You cannot afford to be reckless with it. An artillery, you can afford to be reckless with an artillery. 6,000, not really a big deal. 15,000, pretty big deal. So, but still, it's not like I wanted to be attacked. I'm still going to try to protect it. So day 12 rolls in, and you can see that both players are getting their superpower very close now. I am going to get my Winter Fury before he gets his Black Storm, but that is completely fine. So, you know, he continues to move his infantry forward. He doesn't want to let up this building right here, but I have another infantry ready to reinforce my first one. So I'm feeling pretty good about this. You know, I'm still holding the building strong. So here he decides to start capping my property, which was kind of interesting, and he decides to go for another capture as well. He's playing very recklessly. Normally, I like this kind of play, but in this situation, I'm not really sure if it's the best thing to do, because I have plenty of opportunities to interrupt his caps. He does send in his battlecopter, though, and this battlecopter is very annoying. He decides to attack my infantry, which is... I was very puzzled about this move, let's just put it that way. I think a better move right here would have been to attack my tank, because my anti-air is not in range to respond, and this tank would have gotten demolished by this battlecopter. I think there's a chance he might have one-shot it, actually, because he's Hawke, and he has 20% extra firepower thanks to that comm tower. It probably would have gotten brought down to 1 HP. Maybe with very good luck he could have destroyed it. But yeah, attacking an infantry when you can attack a tank, weird play on him. I don't really understand why he did that. I guess he really wanted to kill this infantry. Maybe he just wanted to really get rid of my capture power. So he moves this rocket in right now. It's in a good position right now on the city. It's well protected. It's supplied every turn. It's zoning out my Neo tank. So it's a good position for this rocket. But again, imagine if instead of these 2 rockets, he had 4 extra tanks up here. Or 2 medium tanks. Like, it would have been so much scarier for me. So he sends his battlecopters in. He sends a rocket up here. I don't really know what he plans for it to do over here. This is a bad position for the rocket. I think he was planning to have it go into this forest tile right here, but it's just too scary, man. Like, there's too many opportunities for me to kill it. So he moves in another battlecopter. He attacks my medium tank, and you know, he's doing a pretty good job here attacking my tanks, even attacking my mech. This is also a good play. But again, all I wanted with this mech was to tie up one of his tanks for this turn, so I'm pretty happy with this overall. So my turn rolls in, and I am just shy of getting my Winter Fury, so I decide to take a shot at his tank with my artillery. That is enough for the Winter Fury, and I pop it. Now, do you remember how I said at the start of this match that I don't think Black Storm counters Winter Fury? Here is why, okay? There's a number of reasons. Now, Black Storm will mitigate some of the damage done by Winter Fury, this is true. However, you will see that I will do a lot this turn. So I start by taking some relatively simple engagements against him. I get a bad luck roll here, which I thought was a little bit annoying, and I also failed to kill this infantry, but at least it's useless now. So I just decide to try and kill as many units as I possibly can. And this is why Winter Fury is so extremely good. It brings units down to 8 HP, and keep in mind, guys, when units are low on HP, they get less defense, so they're easier to kill. So I'm moving my tanks here. Moving my anti-air to summon his battlecopter, I take out his mech. And I decide to try and take out his tank as well. I use my mech to take out his medium tank. I finish off his 1 HP tank. You know, I don't want to leave it alive because it's going to be a 3 HP tank after Black Storm. And I'm moving my battlecopter. Attack his tank. Take out his tank. So you can see I'm systematically just focusing his weakened units down to prevent him from getting repairs from Black Storm. Take out his infantry. And look at that. Just look at how good this turn was for me. And here, I'm also doing something kind of sneaky that I was kind of proud of in hindsight. So look at what I'm building this turn, okay? I have look at the money that I have in my bank. 33,000, that's a lot of money. What do I build? Infantry and transport copters. Now, why am I building infantry and transport copters and leaving 26,000 in the bank? Well, he's about to pop his Black Storm next turn. So why would I increase my repair cost? I can save that money and I can invest them into some high cost units next turn. Now, right now, I am not being pressured, and keep in mind that next turn is also going to be snow, so Hawke will not be able to move his units very far. So I'm not in any immediate need of reinforcements. And so for me to build like a Neo tank and a medium tank and a battlecopter this turn or something like that, I probably wouldn't be able to afford all that. But let's say I build a Neo tank and a battlecopter this turn. 20% of that is going to have to go into repairs next turn. That's going to drain a lot of money from me over the course of a match if I do that a lot. So instead, I just build cheap units and I save up my money. Less money spent on repairs, less money spent overall. And I mean, just look at Hawke right now. Sure, the Black Storm will repair a lot. You know, it's going to heal up this mech, it's going to heal up the transport copter, these infantry will all be healed up. It's going to be a good Black Storm for sure. However, he'll be forced to spend money repairing this medium tank, he'll be forced to spend money repairing this rocket, this tank will have to be repaired. He's going to waste a lot of money on repairs, this tank will have to be repaired. So, despite the fact that he pops Black Storm, a lot of money will be wasted on repairs, and I have been able to kill a lot of units thanks to Winter Fury. So again, yes, Black Storm, good power to pop after Winter Fury, but it's not going to mitigate all the damage done by it. Not by a long shot. The Winter Fury is still going to be extremely strong. So, his turn rolls in, and just look at the value difference right now. 130,000 to his 94,000. Now, that being said, this Black Storm still gonna hurt a lot. I mean, look at that. He basically, you know, I mean, just look at that. Look at that. I mean, still a strong power, you know? From 94,000 versus 130,000 to 100,000 to 108,000. So, you know, despite the fact that Black Storm doesn't hard counter Winter Fury as much as it could, it's still a pretty strong power, you know? But just wait. The next Winter Fury is gonna be even more magnificent. However, despite the fact that he has kind of repaired a lot of the damage done, the snow is still hampering his movement quite considerably. Like, this transport copter is not able to go all the way down, you know, his units are slowed, his battlecopter can't get out of range of my anti-air, I mean, it's guarded by a mech, but still, you know, his push just is completely halted. And he does get a pretty nice shot on my Neo tank with his battlecopter, and that's pretty nice, and he still gets the capture here because of the road, but still, man, like, he can't move for shit. And like, his push has just completely halted, you know? Winter Fury is just such a disgustingly good power. Now, he builds a bomber here, pretty good move on his end, but he fails to realize that a fighter is the perfect unit for me right now because he has so many battlecopters. So when I saw him build this bomber, I was just like, oh, okay, cool. I was going to build a fighter anyway. Now I want to build a fighter even more, so not necessarily a great move on his end. So here I build my second transport. I realized that on a match like this with no time limit, it could go on for a pretty long while. So getting a couple transports out, not going to be a bad idea, I think. So, you know, I continue moving units in, and here I decide to do a pretty strong push down south. So here you will see that his south flank will crumble completely. I mean, look at this. I am taking out unit after unit after unit, and he has 0 presence. I joined my tank together because I think a 7 HP tank is just going to be a little bit more valuable here. And while I may not have a strong presence in the center, all he has are indirects. And indirects by themselves cannot push. They're good at averting a push, they're good at zoning out, but pushing with indirects is hard unless your name is Grit. I attack his battlecopter with my battlecopter, using this 2 HP medium tank to interrupt a cap here. Don't want to let him get one of my cities, that would be very bad. I decided to try and go for this property right here, but he does have a rocket pretty close by. And here I build a fighter. Fighter is an excellent choice here. He has tons of battlecopters on the field and a bomber, so the fighter is pretty much the perfect counter here. And I build an anti-air as well. I just have a lot of money to spend this turn because I saved up money from last turn. So at the end of the day, all I did was just, it's not like not building any units for a turn hurt me in any way. It just saved me a bunch of money. And this fighter is fast, so he'll be able to reinforce the center pretty soon anyway. So his turn rolls in. He does a valiant job pushing me back in the south here. But he's still going to struggle quite a bit. Now he builds his first black boat. Honestly, both of us should have built black boats way earlier. They're incredibly good on this map. But he's not willing to let up on his push in the north. He really wants to focus his attention here right now. And he has a pretty scary army coming my way. He has a medium tank, he has tanks, he has bombers. So, it's a scary push. And I realized that I have to do something. I was also very bummed out here that I let my tank be attacked by his battlecopter. Definitely not a good move on my end. He builds another battlecopter. And at this point, I'm like, okay, you know what? You're going to build a bunch of battlecopters and a bomber? I'm going to build 2 fighters. And this was a very good move on my end. I was very happy with this move right here. 2 fighters, man, it's going to completely shut down any bomber aggression. At this point, he kind of has to build a fighter of his own to zone out my fighter. Basically, if he doesn't do anything with these 2 fighters, he's going to have a big problem on his hands because I'm just going to completely dominate the airspace right here. So I'm using my transports right now to full effect, moving a Neo tank into the center. And I have to reinforce here because he's pushing very hard up north. So I have to do what I can to basically stop his push here. However, my battlecopter is completely uncontested in the center right here. And look at how exposed his rockets are. Look at how exposed his rockets are. Rockets by themselves are not good units. They need shields. They need other units to be effective. Imagine, again, I know I've said this a lot, but imagine if instead of these 2 rockets, he had 2 medium tanks up here. How much more scary that would have been. Again, these 2 rockets didn't end up being good investments on his end. So I interrupt the cap, get a bit of a bad luck roll here, but I get a good luck roll here, which is nice. And I'm just doing what I can to just basically just push him away. I move into the center, or the south here. I have 2 tanks to his 1 tank. 2 of them are injured, but that doesn't matter. 3 tanks to 1 tank is still going to win out. I use my infantry here to block him from taking the city away, or basically to prevent him from interrupting the cap. So I'm going to get this property away from him right now, and that's going to be pretty huge. That's 2,000 more income for me, 2,000 less for him. That's a disparity of 4,000 every single turn, and he's going to start to feel that very quickly. In a high income match like this, every property matters so much more, because it's going to tilt the balance really heavily in one side if you don't interrupt those caps. So yeah, I'm playing kind of defensively right here. I know he's planning to push in here, but I know that once my 2 fighters arrive at the scene, I will be able to shut down any battlecopter aggression that he has. And this bomber also is going to be completely useless. Not going to be able to do anything. Now again, he tries to get a good luck roll here. He fails on the first, he succeeds on the second. And he sends in a tank. All he's doing is really attacking infantry. He's sending his battlecopter in here to do some damage to my artillery too, but that's not really something that I'm worrying about. He does have a rocket right now though in range of my city, so this city is, I'm never gonna get this city. So yeah, this rocket, not a terrible unit. I mean, it's basically preventing me from getting a city, but again, that's all it's really doing. He's taking a shot on my Neo tank with his battlecopter here. Not a good move considering I have fighters in the vicinity. I don't really know why he did this. Really weird. Now, one thing I want you to notice right now is look at how expensive Hawke's Black Storm is. And this is actually an argument in favor against Hawke over long matches. So with Hawke's Black Storm being so ridiculously expensive that it is, it costs 9 stars, which is ridiculous. That 20% diminishing returns that you get on your power every time it is activated, you really start to feel that. Once Hawke activates his Black Storm once or twice or maybe even 3 times, it's going to take him such a long time to get his next superpower. I mean, look at the differences between our powers right now. My Winter Fury costs 75,000. His Black Storm costs 97,000. So as the match goes on, I am statistically just going to get more Winter Furies than he will get Black Storms. That's another point in favor that Hawke doesn't actually hard counter Olaf, because he's just not going to be able to keep up. The 20% diminishing returns will hurt him so much more than Olaf. And in the end, I'm going to get like 2 Winter Furies to his 1 Black Storm. And at that point, he won't be able to mitigate the damage anymore. And he's doing a good job here resupplying his transport copter with his Black Boat. Black Boats are just fantastic units, man. I love them. He attacks with his tank here. He realizes that he's not going to win, so he's just going to do as much damage as he can. But I think he realizes at this point that the south is lost. He's not going to be able to do anything down south. So he's trying his luck up north. However, I have a lot of units coming his way. And here he builds a missile. Again, I don't understand this. Missiles, man, they're not good units. I don't like missiles. They're just bad anti-air, man. Like, at this point, he was going heavily on the indirects, and the missile is just such an easy unit to circumvent, especially without Fog of War. On Fog of War maps, I do like the missile. You know, you can put it in a forest. The missile has 5 vision, which is as much as a recon. It's actually pretty good as a scout. So if this was a Fog of War match and he had hidden a missile in this woods, yeah, it could have done some pretty decent damage, but in a non-Fog of War match, I can just fly around the missile. And it has a huge minimum range. I can get a bomber or a fighter within here. It can't do anything. So I very much disagree with this here. Should have bought an anti-air instead. Much cheaper, much more effective. So day 16 rolls in, and here comes the fighters. First, I'm going to push him away in the south. Look, he has no presence in the south anymore. Like, I am just completely dominating him here. I got infantry coming in to capture his properties. He has to do something fast. He is about to lose the entire southern flank. This is not going to go well for him. My anti-air has arrived on the scene, warding away any battlecopter aggression. My Neo-Tank just demolishes his tank. I love how effective Neo-Tanks are at clearing out tanks. It's so incredibly valuable. I take down his battlecopter, and my second fighter is moving in as well. With these 2 fighters, I am basically going to dominate the airspace. And this missile is not going to do anything to prevent me from doing that. It's so easy to maneuver around a missile. Now here I decide to build my Black Boat because my transport is out of fuel and I don't want to move it back to the airport, nor do I want to build an APC. So I decide, you know what, let's just get a Black Boat onto the scene, you know? It's just nice to get some infantry here. So once again, I'm continuing to build a lot of infantry. You gotta build infantry, man. You gotta, especially at a high income match like this, you cannot forego your infantry. You need a constant stream of infantry to cap properties. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. Now I move my battlecopter down here to take out his mech. There's nothing that can threaten this battlecopter right now. I build another Neo-Tank because Neo-Tanks are amazing in a match like this. And I move my artillery up here basically to prevent him from taking the city away from me. It's just a 6 HP artillery, but he will do a good job warding away any attempts to cap this property. Again, this artillery, it didn't get to shoot this much this match, but I'm still very happy with everything it did. I think it definitely earned itself in value-wise. So day 16 rolls in. And here, my opponent decides to focus a little bit more on the south. He realizes that he has to do something. So he sends some battlecopters towards here, but this is the problem. I got an 8 HP anti-air just sitting there. It's going to zone out every single one of his battlecopters. Now, he does have a bomber, but hey, look at that. I have 2 fighters. And if he doesn't respond to these 2 fighters, he's going to have a big problem on his hand. This missile isn't going to do shit. He needs a fighter right now. That's what he needed to build like 2 turns ago. He needed to build fighters to contest my fighters. Because right now, I'm just going to completely shut down the airspace in a matter of 2 turns. He has to move his bomber away because, of course, his bombers are within range of my fighters. Fighters are just so fast. like they completely shut down any bomber in the air unless you have fighters of your own. So yeah, things are about to get very nasty for him. Now he tries to capture this property, and to his credit, he almost got it, but I have too much in this vicinity for him to be able to take a property. So he's moving his rockets forward. In my opinion, he's spreading himself way too thin right now. He's setting himself up for way too many attacks. Like, he doesn't have enough units in the center here to protect these 2 rockets. The moment he moves his medium tank out, this rocket is just butt naked, completely exposed. I have 2 Neo-Tanks and a tank right here. They're super fast, able to close the distance. A Neo-Tank is also capable of punching through a tank on planes. So if I move a Neo-Tank in here, it's going to get repaired next turn. It's going to go in here, one-shot this tank, then this tank can move in and kill the rocket. It's not going to end well for him. So day 17 rolls in. I'm basically setting up for the big push. You know, you can tell that in a couple of turns, like, shit is really going to hit the fan here. But I'm just, you know, slowly marching my way through the south, taking every single one of his properties. Here I decide to attack his battlecopter with my battlecopter, mainly just to prevent him from interrupting my cap, and also just to prevent this bomber from going here. You know, I move my tank back. I'm playing it cool. I'm not overextending, you know. I'm just kind of like taking my time, taking his properties one by one. Right now, I'm earning 36,000, there's 33,000. So I'm in a good position right now. If I can just extend this and just delay it, slowly, little by little, I'm going to get the value leader. So he's the one forced to have to do something right now. I can play it cool. I can play it defensive. I don't need to push. I have the income lead. He's the one who needs to make something happen right now. So here, I mean, look at this. I mean, look at this. I mean, this is insane. You know, look at how fast the fighters are. You know, like completely shut down. What can he do about this? Nothing, because he doesn't have anti-air. What can he do about this fighter that I just moved down here? Nothing. It's on the edge of his missile range. Look at this fighter. Nothing can come within this fighter's movement range in the air without being shot down. The only way he can counter this fighter is with a fighter of his own. But he didn't build a fighter, and that was his biggest mistake of this match, I think. I know that's a bit of a meme right now, but I'm not going to stop saying it. And just look at this, man. Look at this devastating push. I'm just taking out so many of his units right now, and I haven't even begun the monster push yet. I'm just setting up for the next turn, basically. So right now, I have 217,000 value to his 178,000. Of course, he hasn't built anything yet. So let's see what he does in this turn. He moves the missile forward. You know, he attacks my Bodocopter. Not bad. Moves his bomber, like, he has to move his bomber brave, but look, he can't get out of range of my fighter. So he's doing something pretty clever here. You know, he's putting his bomber here so that if I want to attack his bomber, I have to go within range of his missile. Pretty clever move on him, but it's still worth it for my end. You know, 20,000 is the price of a fighter. Bomber's worth 22,000. If I can take out a bomber for a fighter, I'll do that anytime. I'm fine with that. So he continues to try and cap this property. He's doing a pretty good job, honestly. He continues to interrupt this cap. I'm basically just giving his rocket something to fire at this point. And, ladies and gentlemen, he finally builds a fighter. A little bit too late, but he does build it. It's about time to show you guys the best Winter Fury I have ever popped. And here, you will see just why Black Storm can't keep up. Okay? So my turn rolls in here. All I need to do is get a little bit of extra power charge, so I go in for the bomber because I'm going to one-shot it anyway. So I take out the bomber. Now I have Winter Fury. Look at this turn right now. This is going to be a thing of beauty. Popping the Winter Fury. All of his units takes damage. Move in with my fighter. Take out his Bodocopter. Move in with my anti-air. Kill his Bodocopter. And his rocket is now left exposed. It's completely dead right now. Neo-tank moves in, takes out the mech. Medium tank moves in, takes out the tank. Because of the 2 HP damage, it kills it. Neo-tank moves in, rocket goes boom. Both of his rockets are gone. Neo-tank moves in, take down his medium tank. Interrupt the cap, take down the infantry. Oh my god, this turn, man. Oh my god, this turn, man. Oh, I get chills just watching this, man. It felt so good. You have no idea how good this turn felt. Like a good turn in Advanced Wars, man, nothing beats it. And I just move in. And not only have I completely crippled any unit that he has, he can't follow it up because the snow will just prevent him from doing anything. So yes, he's gonna get his Black Storm this turn. But I have 220,000 value to his 100,000. I mean, this was a crippling push. Not only that, his fighter is not able to attack my fighter because of the snow. His units are not able to move anywhere because of the snow. So he pops his Black Storm, and to his credit, I mean, it takes away 30,000 value from me. Gives him roughly about, let's see that again. So I have 220,000, he has 100,000. He pops Black Storm, he repairs 11,000 funds worth of units, and he drains roughly 50,000 funds from me, which is very good. But it's not enough. It's not enough. He's lost too much. And you know, to his credit, he gets a good shot with his missile, which does something. And he moves in his medium tank, takes out my neo tank. But at the end of the day, even though it was a decent Black Storm is not going to cut it when the Winter Fury is that strong, you know. And you know, he moves in. And I get another turn here. I thought actually he resigned this turn, but I guess not. So yeah, I'm just gonna follow this up with even more aggression, you know. I am basically on a roll here. There's no way he can stop my momentum at this point. So we're just gonna quickly go through this turn right here because it is the end. And it is pretty obvious that it is the end. Right now, he's not gonna get another Black Storm. I'm gonna get my Winter Fury probably a turn before he's gonna get his Black Storm. Look at how expensive his Black Storm is right now. 113,000. That's a lot. You're not gonna get that. So that's pretty insane. So yeah, I win on day 19. This was an absolutely amazingly fun match to play. And really just puts it in perspective just how broken Olaf is, man. Like, honestly, I'm not going to say that he hard counters Hawke. Like, I would say that Hawke is a good pick against Olaf for sure. But in a match like this, where Winter Fury just allows you to kill units, Blackstorm just doesn't do enough to compensate. And as the match goes on, Blackstorm is just going to get progressively more expensive. And I do believe at this point, with my Winter Fury costing 88,000 and his Blackstorm costing 111,000 or 113,000, I should say, I do believe I would have gotten my next Winter Fury one turn before he would have gotten his Blackstorm. And at that point, it's completely game over for the Hawke player. So he made some pretty crucial mistakes in this match. I would say the 2 rockets did not make sense. The missile also didn't make sense. He didn't get his fighter out quickly enough. And I actually don't think he built enough Neotanks. I actually think in a match like this, Neotanks are amazing. And not, like, he didn't build many Neotanks at all. I built a lot of Neotanks. But yeah, it was a fun match and definitely made me realize just how broken global damage powers are, if I didn't know that already. This one definitely put it in perspective for me. But I hope you guys enjoyed this match. If you enjoyed it, give it a like and a comment. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.